They shoved me into a retirement home like I was last week's garbage. But what my kids didn't realize was that I wasn't just fuming, I was plotting. Before I dive into my tale of getting even and finding my way back, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. I'm curious to hear where my fellow warriors are coming together. Let me take you back to the moment my world flipped upside down. The sky hung low, a gloomy gray, thick with the sting of betrayal nobody had spoken out loud. My son Ethan rang me that morning, his voice oozing fake worry. "Mom, we're swinging by to help sort some stuff out," he said. Help. I should have caught the red flags right then. I'd just wrapped up my morning ritual, a mug of Earl Grey tea on the porch, soaking in the neighborhood waking up. For 38 years, I've perched in that same wicker chair, watching the seasons shift, kids grow up, and neighbors move in and out. My Victorian house on Maple Street has been my safe haven ever since Victor and I scraped together every penny to buy it as starry-eyed newlyweds. We pinched every dollar, lived on beans and rice, and took extra jobs to make it ours. When Victor passed from a heart attack 12 years back, this place became more than just a house. It turned into my lifeline to him, to our shared dreams, to every moment we'd carved out together. That morning, I was tidying up, even though the place was already spotless, a habit I got from my mama that stuck with me. At 71, I'm still holding my own, sharp as ever, even if I misplace my keys now and then or blank on a name. Nothing out of the ordinary for my age. Definitely not enough to raise any alarms. I sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd patched up fevers, thrown birthday parties, and talked my kids through their heartaches. I'd even baked their favorite coffee cake, using the recipe Victor's mom handed down to me. The cinnamon sugar topping came out golden and perfect. I set out their special mugs, Ethan's University of Michigan one, Nora's, world's best lawyer, cup her daughter gave her one Christmas, and Lucas's chipped blue ceramic mug he'd crafted in high school pottery class. I can still picture the pride in Lucas's eyes when he handed me that uneven, heartfelt gift. Silly old Marie, still laying out the table for kids who were coming to rip it all away. They showed up like a firing squad. Ethan marched in first, all stiff in his crisp suit, his salt and pepper hair cropped short and sharp, his eyes, his father's eyes, dodging mine. At 45, he's a dead ringer for Victor, but with one big difference, Victor's gaze always radiated warmth. Ethan's eyes are icy, always weighing things up. As CFO of some mid-level company, he's gotten used to viewing everything as either an asset or a liability. I never imagined I'd end up on the liability side of his balance sheet. Nora came next, gripping her fancy purse like it was armor. At 42, my only girl has changed from the tender kid who'd nurse hurt sparrows back to health into a corporate lawyer whose feelings seem as tightly buttoned as her sleek pantsuit. Her blonde hair was yanked back in a perfect bun, not a wisp out of place, just like her tightly controlled world. 3 years after her divorce, she's grown tougher, more fragile, like she's sealed off any part of herself that could get hurt again. Lucas trailed in last, clutching a folder of papers that set off warning bells in my gut. At 38, my youngest has always been the tag-along, swayed easily by his big brother and sister. A high school history teacher with a gentle face that used to remind me of my brother, but that day, his kindness was buried under a stubborn resolve that made my stomach drop. He's got 2 kids of his own, my only grandkids, who barely call anymore now that they're teenagers. Coffee cake? I offered, my voice steadier than the storm brewing inside me. It's still warm. No thanks, Mom, Ethan said, glancing at his watch. We've got a lot to go over. Mom, Nora started, using that condescending tone people save for toddlers or old folks. We've been talking. That's always how it begins, isn't it? When they're about to tear your life apart. She went on about this amazing place they'd found for me, Sunset Gardens. The way she talked it up, you'd think it was a 5-star hotel, not the cage it turned out to be. Private rooms with panic buttons, daily activities to keep your mind sharp, round-the-clock staff, and a dining hall with healthy meals. I'm not leaving, I said, my voice firm. This is my home. Ethan cleared his throat. Mom, let's be practical. This house is too much for you to handle alone. I handle it just fine, I shot back. Mrs. Penelope's grandson cuts the grass, and I get a cleaner in once a month. Lucas pushed the papers toward me. Mom, you've been slipping. We're worried about you. Slipping? I almost laughed. I forgot to call you back once last week. That makes me helpless. Ethan cleared his throat again. You left the stove on twice this month. Once, I corrected. And I noticed right away. Nora chimed in, the neighbors saw you wandering outside in your nightgown. I was grabbing the paper in my robe, not a nightgown, I snapped. That nosy Mrs. Winona needs to get a hobby. My anger just slid off them like water on glass. They'd practiced this, I realized. They'd predicted my arguments and had their comebacks ready. This wasn't a conversation, it was a verdict. But they'd already decided. The knife twisted deeper when Lucas admitted they'd sign me up for Sunset Gardens using the power of attorney I'd given him after a minor surgery last year. I'd signed it, groggy from anesthesia, trusting him when he said it was just for medical emergencies. Just in case something goes wrong during recovery, Mom, he'd said. So we can handle medical decisions if you need us to. I'd scribbled my name without reading the fine print, a mistake I'll never make again. We're selling the house, Ethan said, his voice flat. The market's good. We'll get a great price. Selling my house? My voice barely worked. The house your dad and I paid off 30 years ago. Where you all grew up. It's too big for you now, Nora said, avoiding my eyes. The money will cover Sunset Gardens. And the rest of the money? I asked. After paying for this place? A heavy silence hung in the air. Ethan muttered something about securing my future needs. That's when it hit me, this wasn't about my well-being. It was about my property. My 3-bedroom Victorian, in a neighborhood that's suddenly up and coming, was worth more to them than I was. The house where I'd kissed boo-boos, thrown graduation bashes, and welcomed daughters-in-law was now just a paycheck to cash in. I need time to think, I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to stay strong. There's nothing to think about, Mom, Ethan said, checking his watch again. It's all set. We're taking you today. Today? The room seemed to spin. But my things, my photos, we've packed the basics, Nora cut in. We'll grab anything else you need later. But my garden, I said, the roses I just planted, Mom, Lucas said softly, the kindest of the 3 but still in on it, the new owners might keep the garden. You can have a little plant at Sunset Gardens. A little plant. As if 50 years of tending my roses could be swapped for a sad potted philodendron on a windowsill. In just 2 hours, they'd stuffed a single suitcase with my life. 2. My whole 68 years of life got stuffed into one measly suitcase. My kids didn't even give me a say in which photos to bring along. Nora picked out a family picture from a decade ago, taken when we were all on a trip to Florida. Victor was already gone, but the rest of us were grinning under a palm tree. It's a nice snapshot, sure, but not the one I'd have chosen. I'd have grabbed the black and white photo from our wedding day, where Victor's eyes crinkled with joy as he gazed at me, his love practically spilling out of the frame. As they hustled me out the front door, I stopped to run my fingers over the doorframe, where we'd scratched pencil marks to track the kids' heights over the years. Those little lines would probably be covered with paint before the month was out. 38 years in that house, and I didn't even get a proper farewell. The drive to Sunset Gardens was dead quiet. I stared out the window, trying to burn the streets of my neighborhood, where I'd lived for 40 years, into my memory, knowing I might never lay eyes on them again. We rolled past Samuel's grocery, where I'd pop in every Tuesday, waving to Mr. Samuel, who always set aside the juiciest peaches for me. We drove by St. Mark's Church, where Victor and I went to Sunday services, where we baptized our babies, where we said goodbye to him at his funeral. We passed the park where I'd pushed my kids on swings, cheered at their baseball and soccer games, and later brought my grandkids before they got too cool for slides and monkey bars. My children jabbered on about nonsense, Lucas's new job title, Nora's fancy vacation plans, Ethan's shiny new car, like they hadn't just ripped my entire world out from under me. Like they weren't carting their own mother off to what felt like a lifelong lockup. Sunset Gardens was a bland, beige building with a fake cheeriness that hit me like a punch to the gut. Perfectly trimmed flower beds bursting with bright colors. A sign with some cheesy motto about, where your golden years sparkle. A stone walkway leading to double doors, where my free life would end and my monitored existence would kick off. A woman in a flowery uniform met us with a clipboard and a smile that didn't touch her eyes. Her badge said, Jasmine, Activities Coordinator. Mrs. Bennett, welcome to your new home, she chirped. I didn't say a word. Home? This sterile place with its hospital-like smell and rows of identical doors? This wasn't a home, it was a warehouse for parents nobody wanted anymore. Jasmine gave us a tour that felt like a pushy sales pitch for a lousy vacation package. The dining hall had round tables and food that looked like it came from a cafeteria line. The rec room had old folks staring blankly at a TV blaring too loud. The wellness center was just a nurse's station with blood pressure monitors and carts full of pill bottles. My room, number 207, was small but private, at least. A twin bed with a pastel floral blanket, a nightstand with a plain lamp, a dresser, a tiny bathroom with grab bars by the toilet, and a window facing the parking lot. My pastel-decorated jail cell. Dinner's at 5:30, Jasmine said, all perky. We're serving meatloaf tonight, a resident favorite. I seriously doubted that. I doubted anything here could be anyone's favorite. My kids made a big show of helping me settle in, folding my few belongings into the dresser, setting the Florida family photo on the nightstand. Nora hung up my clothes, just a sliver of my wardrobe, in the cramped closet. Ethan set up a basic flip phone they'd bought me, programming their numbers as my only contacts. Lucas arranged my toiletries in the bathroom, lining them up with way more care than needed. Well, Ethan said at last, glancing at his watch for the third time, we'd better hit the road. Traffic's gonna be a mess if we wait. They hugged me goodbye one by one, quick and stiff, like they were checking off a box. Nora pecked my cheek, her pricey perfume lingering after she stepped back. We'll visit soon, she said, but it was an empty promise, and we both knew it. Lucas was the only one who seemed a little torn. You'll settle in here, Mom, he said, like he was trying to convince himself. Just give it a shot. Then they were gone, leaving me alone in room 207, surrounded by beige walls and the faint hum of a TV down the hall. The door shut with a quiet click that felt like the final hammer strike on a coffin. That first night, I sobbed into my pillow, muffling the sound so no one would hear. It wasn't the lumpy bed or the strange creaks keeping me up, it was the fact that my own kids, the ones I'd poured my heart and soul into, had tossed me aside for a paycheck. I cried for the garden I'd never see flower again, for the kitchen where I'd never bake another cherry pie, for the creaky third step Victor always swore he'd fix but never did, for the home that had held my heart for nearly 40 years. But Claire Bennett doesn't stay knocked down forever. It took me 2 weeks to shake off the fog of grief. 2 weeks of choking down tasteless meals in the dining hall. 2 weeks of sitting through condescending activities, meant for folks with way worse memory problems than me. 2 weeks of restless nights and mornings spent wiping away tears. On the 15th day, I woke up with a spark of clarity I hadn't felt since they dragged me here. Enough moping. It was time to pay attention, to scheme, to take action. I started looking at my surroundings with fresh eyes. I noticed the staff, overworked, but most of them decent. There was Carmen, a young nursing assistant who always paused to ask how my day was going. Amit, the night shift supervisor, who'd slip fresh cookies to residents who couldn't sleep. Jared, the janitor, who whistled jazzy tunes while he mopped the floors. I saw the other residents, some had given up, but others were still pushing back against the darkness. Mrs. Mailing in room 210, who did Tai Chi every morning on a tiny patch of grass out back. Mr. Diego in 215, who'd read poetry to anyone who'd listen. The woman in 203, whose name I didn't know yet, who wept for her husband every night. Then I met Paula. She was in the common room, playing solitaire and swearing up a storm when the cards didn't cooperate. Her silver hair was cut in a chic bob, and she rocked bright red lipstick that matched her cardigan. Huge turquoise rings clinked against the cards as she slapped them down. "You've got that, my no-good kids dumped me here, look," she said, not even glancing up from her game. I burst out laughing, my first real laugh in weeks. "Is it that obvious?" "Sweetie, I've seen that same look staring back at me in the mirror." She nodded at the chair across from her. "Sit down. Spill your story." Just like that, Paula pulled me into her world. She was 77, a retired literature professor with zero filter and no tolerance for feeling sorry for herself. Her son and daughter-in-law had stuck her here after she broke her hip, sold her condo, and kept the cash. "My Robert was always a greedy little jerk," she said, like it was just a fact. Even as a kid, he'd count his sister's cookies to make sure he got more. I told her about my kids, my house, the power of attorney they'd used against me. Her eyes got narrower with every word. "Bastards," she declared when I was done. "No offense." "None taken," I said. "They are bastards." She smacked the table, laughing hard. "I like you, Claire Bennett. You've still got some fight in you." The next day, she introduced me to Miriam, a retired accountant whose mind was sharp as a tack. At 75, Miriam used a cane because of bad arthritis, but her brain could outsmart folks half her age. She'd been at Sunset Gardens for 3 years, dumped there by a niece who hightailed it across the country right after. "The food here's awful," Miriam said as we poked at some rubbery chicken in the dining hall. "But the people aren't terrible, except for Walter over there." 3. "He smacks his food like a cow chewing cud," Miriam said, rolling her eyes. Then there was Vivian, who'd been a fierce civil rights lawyer before a few small strokes slowed her body, but not her fire. At 80, she was the eldest of our little crew, her rich, coffee-brown skin etched with lines from years of laughing and fighting battles. Her daughter had shipped her off to Sunset Gardens when her neighborhood got too rough, which Vivian bluntly called out as too diverse for my daughter's bigoted tastes. We started hanging out every day. At first, it was just for meals. Then we'd stroll around the grounds, and later, we'd sneak into Paula's room at night, where she'd pour wine she'd stashed in old mouthwash bottles. "Got it from Jared," she said, splashing the ruby red liquid into paper cups. "His wife works at the liquor store. Don't snitch to the nurses, they'll swipe it faster than you can blink." One night, after a couple of those mouthwash cups, I spilled my guts about everything: the house, the power of attorney, the money. I laid out every gut-wrenching detail of that dreary morning when my kids swooped in like scavengers eyeing a fresh corpse. Miriam leaned in close. "Did you sign over the house deed?" I shook my head. "No, but they've got power of attorney for medical stuff." "Not necessarily for financial decisions," Miriam said, her eyes sharp. "It depends on what's in the document." Vivian's lawyer instincts kicked in. "Can you remember exactly what you signed?" I racked my brain, the wine and time blurring things. It was after my gallbladder surgery. I was still loopy from the anesthesia when Lucas brought the papers to the hospital. Vivian's eyes narrowed to slits. "Getting you to sign legal papers while you're doped up on post-op meds? That's shaky ground, at best." Miriam nodded. "We need to see those documents and the house deed. And what's going on at your place? They're probably gutting it as we speak. Got any friends who can still get in?" Paula chimed in. "Someone they wouldn't suspect." I thought for a second. "Grace Hallberg, my best friend for 30 years. She's got a key for emergencies." "Call her," Vivian said, her voice firm. "Tomorrow." That's when it began. A tiny spark of defiance, a flicker of vengeance in a place built to make you give up. I wasn't just going to break out of this trap. I was going to make my kids regret ever thinking they could outsmart me. The next morning, I used the community phone to call Grace. The staff eavesdropped on calls, so I kept it vague. "Grace, it's Marie. I need a little favor," I said, feeling the aide's eyes on me. Just some personal papers. Nothing big. Maybe a few photos I forgot to pack. Grace, God bless her, picked up on the urgency in my voice. Of course, honey. I'll swing by with them tomorrow. It all started with that call to Grace, who still had a key to my house. I asked her to hunt for my important documents, specifically the house deed and the power of attorney I'd signed. Check the filing cabinet in Victor's old office, I told her. The deed's probably in a manila folder labeled House Documents. The power of attorney might be there too, or maybe in my bedside table drawer. Lucas gave me a copy. 3 days later, Grace called back, using our secret code, a fake book club meeting, to signal she had news. Marie, I've got it all, she said. The power of attorney is just for healthcare decisions, and the deed's still in your name alone. My heart pounded with a rush of hope, the first I'd felt since landing in Sunset Gardens. Are they still at the house? I asked. No, Grace said. They're prepping it for sale. Boxes everywhere, some furniture already gone. Ethan was there when I stopped by, but I said I was just grabbing a book you'd promised to lend me. Can you bring those papers to me? I asked. And don't tell a soul you're coming. The next day, Grace slipped in during bingo night, smuggling my financial portfolio, the house deed, and the power of attorney document. The staff barely glanced her way, just another visitor for another invisible resident. In my room, my new friends and I pored over the papers. Miriam, with her accountant's eye, confirmed what I'd hoped. My kids had crossed a line they weren't legally allowed to. They could make medical calls for me, but selling my house? That needed my signature. The power of attorney was clear, with fine print at the bottom stating, this document authorizes only healthcare decisions in the event of incapacity. They're banking on you not knowing your rights, Vivian said, her lawyer brain already spinning a strategy, or being too scared to fight back. So, what's our move? I asked. Paula flashed a devilish grin. We outplay them at their own scam. Miriam adjusted her glasses, scanning my financial statements. They haven't touched your bank accounts yet, but they'll try soon. We need to act fast. I nodded. I've got $200,000 in savings, plus my Social Security and Victor's pension. Enough to get out of here and start fresh. Miriam agreed. But we've got to lock it down before they get their hands on it. Over the next week, our plan came together, with each woman bringing her skills to the table. Miriam helped me call my bank to secure my accounts. Vivian got in touch with an old law partner who agreed to take my case for free. And Paula? She taught me how to play the part. The trick, she said, is to act like the frail, confused mom they expect. Let them think they've got you beat. So that's what I did. When Nora called to check in, I kept it fuzzy and sweet. Oh, yes, honey, everything's fine. The folks here are nice. No, I don't need a thing. When Ethan stopped by for a quick 20-minute visit, I played up the disorientation, repeating myself. What day is it? How are the kids? Did you mention a vacation? He left with a smug look, thinking his poor, muddled mom was safely stashed away while he plotted to sell her house. I became the weak, fading mother they wanted me to be, helpless, slipping, and no danger to their scheme. But behind the scenes, we were crafting my getaway. Vivian's law partner, Leonard Fields, confirmed my kids had zero legal right to sell my house. He filed an injunction to block any sale and started the process to cancel their power of attorney. The judge was floored when I laid out the story, especially the part about signing the healthcare proxy while groggy from surgical meds, Leonard told us during a conference call Grace set up. Miriam helped me open new bank accounts my kids couldn't touch and transfer my money. She also linked me with a realtor friend who could help me sell the house on my terms when I was ready. Never underestimate a retired accountant's connections, she said with a sly wink. I did taxes for half the money guys in this town. Grace became our go-between, ferrying info and documents that needed signing or filing. She also kept tabs on my house, reporting that a for sale sign had popped up in the yard. They painted the living room beige, she said, her voice dripping with disgust. Beige. After all the time you spent picking that perfect blue. Through it all, I kept up the act. I went to craft classes and movie nights, flashed vacant smiles when the staff checked on me. I became invisible, the way old women often do, there, but not really seen, speaking but not truly heard. 3 weeks into our plan, Leonard called with big news. The judge approved our motion, he said. Your kids can't sell the house, and their power of attorney is now limited to emergency medical decisions only. A huge weight slid off my shoulders. Step 1 was done. Step 2 was trickier. I had to slip out of Sunset Gardens without tipping off my kids. If they caught wind I was pushing back, they might up the ante. They could try for guardianship, Vivian cautioned, her lawyer's mind already gaming out their moves. They'd claim you're not fit to make decisions and ask a court to appoint someone to control your life. It's a tougher case to make, but not impossible, especially if they dig up doctors to back them up. We'll just have to move quicker, Paula said, her eyes glinting with defiance. Hit them before they even see us coming. She suggested we wait for the facility's annual family weekend, when visitors flooded in and the staff was too busy to notice much. Miriam, ever the number cruncher, figured we'd need about $40,000 to pull off our plan without sweating. I had close to $200,000 in savings my kids hadn't touched yet. We'll need first and last month's rent wherever we land, Miriam said, jotting neat lists in her accountant's handwriting. Plus a security deposit, some furniture, transportation, and a cushion for surprises. What about you three? I asked. I can't just ditch you here. The women shared a quick look. Vivian spoke up. We've talked it over. If you'll have us, we're coming along. My throat got tight. All of you? Paula shrugged. This place is a snooze, and the vibe's better with you. Plus, I've always wanted to check out the desert before I kick the bucket. The desert, Santa Fe, to be exact, Miriam clarified. We've been researching spots. It's got great healthcare, a lively art scene, decent living costs, and a climate that's kind to Vivian's arthritis and my achy joints. Also, Paula added with a sly grin, it's the last place your kids would think to hunt for you. The day before family weekend, Nora called. Mom, we can't make it this weekend. Ethan's got a work conference, Lucas is tied up with the kids, and I've got this big charity gala. I faked a disappointed sigh, but inside, I was cheering. Their no-show made our breakout a whole lot smoother. That Friday night, while the staff was scrambling to set up for the weekend's events, Grace pulled up in her SUV. Paula, Miriam, Vivian, and I slipped out through the service exit, each with just one suitcase. Nobody stopped us. Nobody even blinked. Jared, the janitor, held the door as we loaded our bags. Good luck, ladies, he whispered. We'd told him we were off for a weekend retreat the facility had okayed. He might have guessed we were up to more, but his grin said he was rooting for us. We headed straight to the airport, where 4 one-way tickets to Santa Fe were waiting. I'd always dreamed of seeing the desert, feeling that dry heat, watching those legendary sunsets. Now I'd do it my way. As the plane lifted off, I peered out at the city lights twinkling below. Somewhere down there, my kids were living their lives, smug in the belief they'd neatly tucked their troublesome mom away. They had no clue what was about to hit them. Santa Fe welcomed us with warm breezes and a sky that stretched forever. The desert rolled out in shades of rusty red and sage green, with mountains in the distance, their tips still dusted with spring snow. The air carried the scent of pinyon pine and sage, nothing like the sterile halls of Sunset Gardens. We settled into a cozy adobe-style rental house I'd booked for a month, giving us time to roll out the rest of our plan. The place was simple but charming, with tile floors, a little courtyard fountain, and enough bedrooms for all of us. Vivian and Miriam took the master with its accessible shower, perfect for their mobility needs. Paula nabbed the room with the best light for her books. I picked the smallest one, with a view of the mountains that reminded me of the guest room back home where I'd stitched quilts for years. The next morning, I called Leonard, my lawyer. I'm ready to sell the house, I told him. He didn't pry about my sudden exit from Sunset Gardens. Smart lawyers know when to keep questions to themselves. I'll get the paperwork ready, he said. The market's sizzling. We'll likely get multiple offers. Next, I called my bank to shut down any accounts my kids might know about. With Miriam's help, I moved everything to new accounts they couldn't touch. Then I waited. 3 days later, the chaos hit. My phone buzzed at 8:17 a.m. with Nora's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then Ethan called, then Lucas, then all three in a row, their messages getting more panicked by the minute. Mom, the nursing home called. Where are you? This isn't a joke, Mom. We're worried sick. Mother, you need to call us now. This is dangerous. I listened to each one, feeling a calm I hadn't known in months. Let them sweat. Let them taste a sliver of the fear and powerlessness they'd forced on me. By day 4, their tone shifted to anger. Mother, do you even realize what you're doing? We're responsible for your care. The facility's threatening to bill us. Mom, the police are involved now. This is absurd. Call us back. You're not thinking straight. Paula sat with me, listening to the messages and laughing at their frantic edge. Hear that? That's the sound of people figuring out they've lost the upper hand. On the 4th day, Leonard called. Your house has 5 offers, all over asking. The top one's $80,000 above, all cash, quick close. Take it, I said without a second thought. Your kids are trying to stop the sale, he warned. They're saying you're not mentally fit. I smiled. That's why we had that neurologist check me out last month, right? Send them the report. And remind them that meddling with a legal sale could count as elder abuse. Leonard chuckled. Already on it. Ethan tried to bully me over the phone, but I calmly pointed out the criminal penalties for misusing a healthcare power of attorney for financial gain. He didn't have a comeback, he just hung up. 2 weeks later, the house sold for $900,000. After covering Leonard's fees and setting aside some for taxes, I had over $850,000, way more than I needed for my next chapter. It was time for the final move. I wrote identical letters to each of my kids, not emails or texts, but proper letters on thick stationery, sent by courier with signature required. Dear Ethan, Nora, Lucas, I wrote. By now, you know I'm no longer at Sunset Gardens. What you may not realize is that I've sold the family home, legally and with full mental clarity, as confirmed by Dr. Levine's report, attached. I'm not writing to justify myself, you don't deserve explanations after your disrespect. I'm writing to lay out the consequences. The money from the house is in a trust, and none of it will ever go to you. Instead, it'll fund the Claire Bennett Foundation for Elder Autonomy, which will offer legal help to seniors facing family betrayal. You thought I was too old to handle my life, too weak to live on my own, too foggy to see your scheme. You were wrong on every count. I've started a new life in a place where I'm valued and respected. Don't try to reach me. Any legal moves will be met with countersuits for attempting to exploit an elder. You chose profit over your mother. I choose dignity over fake family bonds. Claire Bennett. I didn't include a return address, phone number, or any way to track me down. Let them wonder. Let them search. Let them grapple with what they've lost. With my freedom and financial security in hand, I rented a gorgeous 2-bedroom home in Santa Fe's Arts District, adobe walls, Viga ceiling beams, a Kiva fireplace, and a walled garden where I planted roses that flourished in the desert sun. Paula moved in with me. 5. Sure, Paula's snoring could wake the dead, but her friendship was worth every sleepless night. Miriam and Vivian settled into places just a short walk away, close enough for us to pop over for dinners or cozy movie nights. Together, we built the foundation I'd vowed to create in my letter. The Claire Bennett Foundation for Elder Autonomy became my way of hitting back and leaving a mark, helping older folks push back against family members trying to rob them of their freedom and savings. I brought on a young lawyer, Alina Morales, to handle the day-to-day work. She was 32, with a Stanford law degree and a fire in her belly, driven by losing her grandmother to a similar betrayal. My abuela passed just 3 months after my uncle dumped her in a nursing home, she told me during her interview. It wasn't sickness that took her, it was a broken heart. They sold her house while she was still alive, told her it was gone, said she had no place left to go. I couldn't save her, but I can fight for others now. Right then, I knew she was the one for the job. We started small, setting up shop in a converted storefront in downtown Santa Fe, a reception area, 2 offices, and a meeting room for support groups and consultations. No more beige, Paula insisted, so we painted the walls a bright sunshine yellow and hung local artwork. Plants spilled over every corner, filling the space with life and color, a haven for those who'd been cast aside. 6 months after we broke out, the foundation had already helped 15 seniors take back their lives. We offered legal aid, temporary housing, and a shoulder to lean on. Every win felt like my own personal triumph. There was Helen Marlowe, whose daughter tricked her into signing over her Iowa farm with a fake promise of building her a cottage on the land, a promise she ditched as soon as she had the deed. We helped Helen get her farm back and kick out the daughter who'd stabbed her in the back. Then there was Jonathan Devo, a retired professor whose nephew drained his bank accounts while posing as his caregiver. We not only got his money back but helped put the nephew behind bars for elder abuse. And Bianca Montoya, a widow whose kids labeled her incompetent when she wouldn't sell her historic Santa Fe home to developers. With our support, she kept her house and had her kids' power of attorney tossed out. Every case fueled my determination. Every victory patched up another crack in my wounded heart. Exactly 1 year after my kids dumped me at Sunset Gardens, a letter from Lucas arrived. Unlike my formal letter, his was scrawled by hand on lined paper, the writing wobbly. "Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me," he wrote. "What we did was beyond excusing. I've spent months trying to convince myself we were looking out for you, that we were doing what was right. But the truth is uglier. We wanted the money. The house you and Dad poured your lives into was just a paycheck to us. We didn't see the home where you raised us, we saw a pile of cash. We didn't care about your feelings or your rights. We saw you as a hurdle to our inheritance. I'm not writing to beg for a second chance. I'm writing because your foundation saved my colleague's mom last month." When he told me about the group that stopped her son from forcing her into a nursing home, I didn't connect the dots until he said your name. "You've turned our betrayal into something incredible and strong. You're helping people when we let you down." I don't expect a reply. I just want you to know at least one of your kids sees how badly we messed up and how much bigger what you've built is in return. With regret and respect, Lucas. I read his letter twice, then tucked it into my desk drawer. I didn't rip it up or burn it, but I didn't write back either. Some wounds are too deep to heal. Some bridges are burned for good. Instead, I poured my energy into growing the foundation. We opened a second office in Phoenix, then a third in Denver. We launched a hotline for seniors in trouble and put out a guide to elder rights that went to senior centers across the country. The work gave me purpose, but my friends gave me joy. Paula, Miriam, Vivian, and I became a chosen family, tighter than the one I was born into. We took trips together, weekend getaways to Taos and Albuquerque, and a big adventure to the Grand Canyon, where Paula, despite her arthritis, insisted on riding a mule partway down. "If I croak, at least I'll go out with a killer view," she said, brushing off our worries. We made new holiday traditions to replace the ones my kids had stolen. For Thanksgiving, we threw a big dinner for seniors with no family nearby. For Christmas, we swapped simple gifts and sang carols around Miriam's piano. For my birthday, they surprised me with a hot air balloon ride over the Rio Grande Valley, the sunrise splashing the desert in gold and pink. 2 years after I was locked away, I was invited to speak at a national elder law conference. Standing at the podium, looking out at hundreds of lawyers, advocates, and seniors, I felt a wave of pride. They thought I was too old to start over, I began. They were wrong. They thought I was too weak to fight back. Wrong again. They figured I'd just fade away, accepting the story they'd written for me. Their biggest mistake was underestimating a woman with nothing left to lose. I told my story, not to wallow, but to inspire. I explained how common it is for elders to be exploited, often by the people they trust most. I shared the red flags and the legal protections seniors can use. I stressed the need for both big systemic changes and empowering individuals to stand up for themselves. The crowd's applause roared. In the back, I spotted a familiar face, Lucas, standing alone, clapping with tears running down his cheeks. I gave him the smallest nod before moving on with my speech. I didn't invite him to the reception afterward. I didn't track him down. Some reconciliations just aren't in the cards. But I did mail him a copy of our latest booklet, Protecting Your Independence, a guide for seniors. Inside, I wrote one line, "Choose better for yourself than you chose for me." The next day, flowers showed up at the foundation office. No note, just white roses, my favorite. Alina asked if I wanted them tossed out. I thought about it, then shook my head. Put them in the meeting room, I said. They'll add some cheer for tomorrow's support group. I kept Lucas at arm's length, but I let one tie stay intact. My grandkids, Chloe and Ryan, now in college, reached out by email. After a few back and forths, I agreed to meet them for lunch when they came to Santa Fe for spring break. They were grown now, 18 and 20, with their dad's kind eyes but none of his spinelessness. Chloe was studying social work, Ryan environmental science. They sat across from me at a little cafe, nervous but resolute. "We had no idea what they did to you," Chloe said, her voice cracking. "Dad didn't tell us until you were already gone, and even then, he made it sound like you needed to be cared for, not that they were after the house." "Your foundation made the news," Ryan added. "That's when we learned the real story." 6. "We saw your name in the news and dug deeper," Chloe said. I studied their faces, looking for any hint of a lie, but all I found was genuine regret. "Your dad's reached out to me," I admitted. Chloe nodded. "We know. He's different since you left." "They all are." "Good," I said, my voice sharper than I expected. "They deserve to carry the weight of what they did." "We're not here to ask you to forgive them," Ryan jumped in. "We just want you to know not everyone in the family was okay with it." I softened a bit. "You were just kids. None of this was on you. We want to be part of your life now," Chloe said, her eyes earnest. "If you'll let us." I looked at these young adults, my grandkids, who shared my blood but not my scars. "I'm not ready for regular visits," I said after a pause. "But we can start with emails now and then. See how it goes." Their relief was obvious, like a weight had lifted. Over lunch, we chatted about their college majors, their hopes, their lives, carefully steering clear of their parents, and I didn't pry. When we said goodbye, they hugged me tight, like they were scared I'd vanish again. 3 years after my breakout, our foundation had helped over 200 seniors and pushed for new laws in 3 states. We'd made national headlines and been featured in big magazines. The woman my kids had written off as worthless had built something extraordinary. That winter, Paula passed away quietly in her sleep. At her memorial, I stood before a crowd of people she'd touched and said, "Paula showed me you're never too old to redefine yourself. Never too late to stand up. Never too late to chase the life you deserve." We scattered her ashes in the garden she'd helped me plant, among the desert roses and sage she loved. I set her turquoise rings on a shelf in my living room, next to a photo of her laughing on our Grand Canyon trip. The house felt quieter without her sharp wit and late-night deep talks, but her spirit lingered in every corner. Miriam and Vivian stayed my closest friends and strongest allies. We took trips to places we'd always dreamed of, the Grand Canyon at dawn, Hawaii's sandy beaches, Vermont's fiery fall leaves. We weren't just getting by, we were living fully. Miriam's arthritis got worse, and she needed a wheelchair for longer outings, but her mind stayed razor-sharp. She kept the foundation's finances tight, making sure every penny helped as many seniors as possible. Vivian became our outreach coordinator, her quiet wisdom perfect for connecting with seniors in distress. On my 72nd birthday, a package arrived from Nora. Inside was my mother's pearl necklace, one I'd had to leave behind when they rushed me out of my home. A note read, "These are yours. I'm sorry for everything." That night, I wore the pearls as I accepted a Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Elder Rights Coalition. When my kids stuck me in that facility, I told the audience, they thought they were closing the book on my life. They didn't know they were just setting up my biggest win. They tried to bury me, not realizing I was a seed. The crowd standing ovation went on for nearly 5 minutes. In that moment, surrounded by people who saw my strength, not my age, I felt whole. The revenge I'd chased had grown into something bigger, a legacy that would outlast my pain and me. For years after my kid's betrayal, Chloe called with news, "Ethan had a stroke." "He's asking for you, Grandma," she said, her voice cautious. "I get it if you don't want to go." I didn't visit the hospital. I couldn't. But I sent a card, not forgiving, but not hateful. "Wishing you a full recovery and the wisdom to use your second chance well," I wrote. It was all the kindness I could spare. He survived, weakened but alive. Chloe said the stroke changed him. He quit his corporate job, started volunteering at a homeless shelter, and went to therapy. I didn't need or trust his transformation, but for Chloe's sake, I was glad he was trying to be better. Nora never reached out again after the pearls. Chloe said she'd thrown herself into work, becoming a senior partner at her law firm and rarely seeing her brothers or their kids. The chasm between us stayed wide, and that was fine by me. 5 years after Sunset Gardens, I published my memoir, Second Blooming. It wasn't just about my kids' betrayal but the journey after, the foundation, the friendships, the power I reclaimed. The book hit bestseller lists, especially with women over 60 who saw their own lives in mine. The publicity tour took me nationwide, from bookstores to TV studios. People magazine ran a feature. NPR gave me a nearly hour-long interview. Seniors lined up with copies for me to sign, often teary as they shared their own stories of being dismissed or disrespected. "You gave me courage," a woman in Chicago told me, her hands shaking as she held my book. "I stood up to my son last week when he pushed me to sell my house. I told him I'd read about Claire Bennett, and I wasn't going down easy." Those moments made every scar worth it. Today, the Claire Bennett Foundation operates in 12 states, having helped over 1,000 seniors reclaim their dignity and independence. We've changed laws and lives. I still live in Santa Fe, in a lovely home with a garden full of the most stunning roses. I have friends who cherish me, work that drives me, and a life fuller than I ever dreamed possible. Miriam passed away last spring, leaving behind financial systems that'll keep the foundation helping seniors long after we're gone. Vivian still comes over for tea every Sunday, her mind sharp even as her body slows. Chloe and Ryan visit 3 times a year, grown into adults I'm proud to know, working in fields that lift others up. We don't talk about their parents, an unspoken rule that keeps things peaceful. Sometimes, when the desert sunset blazes orange and purple, I think about the house my kids stole from me. I think about the life they thought they were ending. And I smile, because their worst betrayal became my chance to start over. At 76, I'm not the woman they dumped at Sunset Gardens 5 years ago. I'm tougher, wiser, and at peace. I've learned family isn't always about blood, that you're never too old to begin again, and that the best revenge isn't anger or violence. It's living well and helping others do the same. They locked me in a home to clear out the house. So I sold it and built an empire that'll stand long after they're forgotten. They said I was too old to change my life. So I reshaped mine and countless others. They thought they were writing my last page. Instead, they handed me the first line of my greatest story. And that, my friends, is how you turn betrayal into victory. It's how you take back your power when the world says your time's up. It's how you show it's never, ever too late to start fresh. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to hit subscribe and share your story in the comments. Your voice counts. Your life counts. And nobody gets to tell you otherwise.